business, where leadership is more than just strategy. It's not just the numbers, it's not just the short-term win, it's the connection. And I'm here, Kylie Denton, with my fellow host, Bram Lagrou. Thanks for joining us again, Bram.
Always a pleasure. Great to see you, Kylie.
And Arthur Kallos, who's our other amazing host on this Beyond Business podcast. He's actually away today. But this podcast was really all about whether you're a CEO, whether you're a leader, whether you run a business, or whether or not you need to lead yourself better. It's about providing some really easy to apply insights, tactical takeaways that you can put into action straight away in order for you to be able to continue to be an amazing leader. And we also have amazing guests on the show. And today I have joining us Darren Mitchell. Welcome, Darren.
Hey, Kylie. Thanks for having me. Great to see you again. G'day, Bram.
G'day, Darren.
My pleasure. So, Darren, we've known each other for a little while. I think a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And every time we get together, it goes way over, but we always have a good laugh. And one of the things that you're actually an engineer turned sales leader. And
yes.
And well, clearly problem solving, because that's what we do in sales too. We problem solve, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Well, you also run your own podcast, the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. I've had the opportunity to be on there twice now as your guest. And I actually, just from getting to know you and spending time with you, I knew how much value you could add to our audience as well. And one of the topic that we're going to be talking about today is what truly drives trust, loyalty, and results in today's sales world. So is it skill? Is it strategy? Or is it something else? That's $1 million question. So welcome, Darren. Do you want to lead us with what do you think it is that really makes that exceptional leader, sales leader, but also builds that trust and loyalty? And
thanks, Kylie. No, I appreciate that, and it's great to be here. It's a really interesting question, and when you were talking there actually about me being an engineer, it's turned into a sales leader. There was a few years in between. So I graduated as an engineer. I did practice in the building industry for a couple of years, but this is way back when the Prime Minister Paul Keating said Australia had to have the recession we needed to have, and the building industry went through the floor. So I ended up in telecommunications, and a long story short, got to associate with a number of really cool people who happened to be in sales. I got the bug. I didn't even think about being in sales. Loved it. Got mentored by a lot of really cool people, and got through a sales process, went into a sales role, and then found myself managing sales teams. And that was a really challenging process. So to answer your question, and I now work in obviously in sales and work with sales teams and sales leaders and so forth, and help them become exceptional. You got to have a level of competency. You've got to have a level of skill set. But my experience over many years, and certainly working with a lot of sales leaders, certainly over the last 10 years, is many of them get promoted because they've been a great individual sales contributor, and they haven't necessarily been given the opportunity to make the transitional jump from individual contributor to sales leader, because the skill set and the competencies are different. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses look at a salesperson who is successful and says, because you've been successful, you'll automatically be a successful leader. So we're just going to give you a team, and we're going to expect your team to be as good as you. So just go and teach them how to be good like you. And a lot of them flounder, right? So what do? They revert back to the skill set that they know, which is often doing the sale. And when they do the sale, they come in on their white horse. They save the deal, or they drive the deal. They get the accolades, and in the process, unfortunately, disintermediate or push their salesperson to the side. And in the process, give the customer a bit of an indication that, the sales leader is the decision maker. So if we want anything done, let's just go straight to the sales leader. And so they don't do it out of any malice. They don't do it out of any desire to be the number one salesperson. They do it actually out of a desire to serve the customer and get the best result, but they don't understand the damage they're causing through that behavior. So one of the big things sales leaders need to understand, certainly in a economy like we have today, is to learn to get out of the way and to empower their team to do the things that they need to do, and to position their salespeople in front of their customers as the go-to people, and not be that, or have to be the hero who comes in and saves the day or be the decision maker. So that's the first thing I want to put on the table, because unfortunately there's still a lot of sales teams that are led by leaders who just love to get involved in the deal.
Yeah.
I love that. Bram, you're nodding heaps. Now, Bram, if you have never met Bram before, he's our Belgian board psychologist. Okay, so he also spends a lot of space in this space as well. And so what are you thinking, Bram, as you're hearing Darren say that?
Oh, look, I resonate with it, and I can clearly see that you're right. The skill set that you were born with, that made you excel. You want to, it's natural to keep doing it. Therefore, jumping in, pushing people aside and rescuing the deal, I think it's a natural thing for people to do unless they've learned differently. And I like the fact that you bring that to the table. And I'd like to hear a little bit more how easy it is for you to get those people to shift their mindset, because it starts with the mindset first, right? The scripts, the structure, the capabilities, it all starts with mindset first. So tell us a little bit more maybe on that side as well.
It's a really interesting question, and if I refer back to my own career, I spent 2 years creating, I guess, a philosophy or an approach to sales leadership before I was given the opportunity to become a sales leader. And I got some opportunities to do some secondments, but it took 2 years for me to get the opportunity to have my own sales team. And so through that 2-year period, I was literally, every conversation I had, every proposal that I wrote, every meeting that I had was through the lens of what would a sales leader do in this particular situation. So yes, I was carrying a quota individually, but I was starting to elevate myself above what my current role was and thinking, well, if I was running a team with me in it, how would I actually deal with this particular situation, or how would I frame a proposal, and so forth. So my mindset had to be developed to the point where I need to be the person who sets the tone. I need to be the person who sets the example, but I can't be the person who does the work for them. And I have to have an attitude of, we want to be able to create a space where people can learn how to develop, but I'm not going to be giving people the answers. Now, even with all of that, 2 years worth of preparation, I finally got the opportunity to take over a sales team. And the sales team that I was given the opportunity to lead was actually the sales team that I was a part of. So I was a peer, and now I've been elevated into a sales leader. Now, to add complication to that, one of the people who I was now responsible for was also my very first sales mentor, who I'd worked with 7 years before, who pretty much helped me fast track my sales development to the point where I'm now a sales leader. Now, thankfully, he was of the mindset that, hey, he played a part in me getting that particular role. So he was a big supporter of me. But the reason I share that is my first 90 days nearly broke me, because despite creating a philosophy, a lot of that was intellectual and it was planning. The actual implementation of that was a lot more difficult. So the way I thought to build trust with my team was to solve all of the problems for them. So I wanted to encourage, I've got an open door policy. So guys, come to me with any challenge, whether it be a strategy, whether it be an approach to a customer, whether it be dealing with objections and so forth, and let us work through it. What I was really saying is, let me solve the problem for you.
Yeah.
So through that process, guess what happened? I created a codependent relationship where all of my account executives would come to me because I had the open door policy, and I would feel really great when they'd come to my desk, and it was a revolving door, and I'd solve one problem, off they'd go. Another person would come in, and solve that problem, off I'd go. I felt fantastic until I nearly burnt out. And I had a mentor that was introduced to me probably about 60 days into that first 90-day period, and he started to ask me questions about what am I doing, what's my approach, and what's my thinking behind that. And I told him, and he said, mate, what are you doing? You're gonna burn out, and you're gonna leave because it's not for you. So you've got to start creating independence, which means your mind shift has to change from, yes, you can still be open, yes, you can still be approachable, but you've got to start creating some friction to ask people to start thinking about their problems first and then potential solutions before you actually have the conversation.
Yeah.
So then the conversation becomes a higher quality, but even then you want to resist the temptation to give them the answers. So my mind shift has to shift from, I want to serve them by giving the answer, to now I want to serve them by creating friction so they can start to be more resourceful rather than me giving the resources. So my mindset had to completely change from, I want to serve them and do everything I can to help them because it came from a good place, to now say, you know what, Bram, I'm not going to give you the answer. You know the answer. Here's some things I want you to start thinking about. Then come back and we'll have another conversation. So it took a bit of time, but gradually over time, we started to develop that independence of thinking. And funnily enough, the quality of the conversations went up. The problems that often would get sent to me or brought to my attention no longer happened because they were getting solved before I even became aware of them. And the quality of the team and the quality of the output started to go up as well. And also, my team were happier. Go figure.
How long did it take you to have that sort of shift?
Well, I'd like to say that it happened in the space of like 2 weeks, but it was probably a process of about 6 months because there was a lot of unlearning that I had to do. Because the other thing I was really conscious of, and it's really only now looking back that I'm conscious of what the patterns were, is I was conditioning my team on how to deal with me. And they were used to being hand-fed the resources. So I had to now change that to teach them resourcefulness, which meant that I had to give them, I guess, some cognitive dissonance where they were not comfortable and they didn't know the answer, but I wanted them to feel that level of discomfort and know that it was okay to feel that discomfort because you're going to learn something that is going to help you become more resourceful down the track. So probably over a period of 6 months that it kind of changed. And with that, there were people within the team that didn't fully embrace it because, like any team, there are some that get it and there are some that just want to be spoon-fed, right? And those ones particularly started to drift into other teams, and that was okay.
I love it. So much gold in that, right? Because you started talking about, I needed to think like a different leader, like a different person, not just as a sales professional, but also as a leader. And then, Bram, you talked about the mindset, but one of the things that caught my attention was you said, I had to think different as a leader because there's different qualities. And as you were talking about all of that, I was like, I wonder what you think the qualities of a sales leader are. And I wrote down a couple, but I'm keen to read them out, but I'm keen for you to add anything, okay? Because these are, I think, really important for all of our audience to hear. Is they're absolutely different qualities, aren't they? We've not only do we have to think differently, like you're talking about, Bram, but we also have to behave differently, right? So you were, asking them to come up with different solutions. You were coaching them. You were training them. You were developing them. You were getting them to bring, challenging them to think strategically. So that real lateral thinking. You were delegating, but also you were empowering.
Yeah.
Right. So they actually become autonomous in nature, but lift themselves up. What have I missed from a quality that you think sales leaders need to show? Because all of this builds trust, doesn't it? It builds trust, it builds loyalty, it builds connection with our people.
It does. Within the training, the development, I'd also throw in a little bit of mentoring there.
Yeah.
And I was also a challenger. So I was not I was a raving fan, but I was also potentially the biggest critic. And I was doing that from a perspective of getting them to almost wake up a little bit, because many of them had been used to being spoon-fed in not just in that particular business, but in many cases their entire career. And I remember having one conversation with one individual who said, my belief is the business's responsibility is to hand me leads and I go and close those leads. So what he was saying is, I like to go and have coffee with customers, maybe eat some croissant or some donuts. And back in the day, it was like, you sign the deal, you keep the copy. There's a signing in triplicate. but he wasn't the type of person who wanted to work for what he needed to do. So I needed to be a bit of a challenger for him to say, hey, if you want to survive in this particular business, but if you want to survive in corporate selling moving forward, you can't just rely on people giving you leads and come in and close it and be the hero. You've got to work for it. You've got to earn the right for you to lead your customers and to serve your customers and create an environment where your customers want to do business with you. That just doesn't happen. You've got to create that. So the other part of that was role modeling as well. So I often talk to leaders because one of my key philosophies around any team that I work with around leadership is I say, guys, your ultimate purpose for being a sales leader or a general leader or an executive leader is to make your role redundant so you're no longer needed. All right. Now that presupposes that you're going to invest in your team and in your people in terms of likely successes and create an environment that your team and the business is going to long outlast you because you've created some sustainability and it's a long leadership shadow. So in order to do that, you've got to now start thinking about your role modeling behaviors. And this is the attributes you've got to start thinking about in terms of who do you need to be every single day and who do you need to be in every single interaction. So it sounds a bit corny, but I often say to teams, hey, you guys run a to-do list, but how many of you have written a to-be list? And when I say that, people look at me as if I'm an alien. So what do you woo-woo stuff? What do you mean a to-be list? Well, I said, well, think about it. When you walk in the morning, whether you've got a car park that you've got to walk from to get into the building up a lift, or whether you walk straight into the front door and go to your desk, how you walk in, understand this, that your team are watching your every single move. Because you need to realize your team are not necessarily going to do what you tell them, but your team are going to do exactly what you show them. And so the to-be list gets you to consciously think about, all right, what are the qualities I need to demonstrate today so that I can be the role model that I want to see play out in my team? That means I have to be not the most boisterous. I have to be the most certain. I have to be the most confident, and I have to be the most authentic I can be. Now, that word itself is overused like you wouldn't believe, but be the most real person you can be because people are going to be watching you. So if you can do that is, and it's hard to quantify, but I guarantee it makes a huge difference.
I'd like to step in here with your permission, Kylie. I'm just wondering, Darren, like, how would you say that the dichotomy or the friction between being authentic, as in truthful to yourself, but also being tactical and strategic, how does that work in your perspective for sales leaders out there?
Well, it's a good question. And we often talk about you want to be authentic, you want to be honest, but you've also got to be tactful, right? So there has to be a balance of, okay, what is the strategy? And who do I need to be as the sales leader in order for this strategy to be executed? Sometimes that means, sometimes that actually means calling it as it is, which says, guys, we are not positioned as well as we think we are. So let's have a bit of a reality check. And if we don't have this conversation now, it may actually prevent us from moving this opportunity forward, which may have a detrimental impact, not only on this strategy for this customer, but also the impact on the business and our profile and our reputation in the marketplace moving forward. So yes, so strategy is really important, but being a really tactful, authentic person, we actually start to unpack that strategy and really ask the hard questions, which a lot of people don't, particularly a sales leader that's wanting to hit a number by a certain date with a sales team that's also wanting to do the same thing. It's very rare for a sales leader to sit in a sales meeting and say, guys, this opportunity, you're telling me it's 50%. It's actually only about 10%. And let's understand why. They don't want to have that conversation because they want to believe that, you know what, by some stroke of miracle lightning, we're going to get this deal and it's going to happen by the 30th of November. Well, the reality is, unless you've done the work, it's probably not going to happen because your competition is probably better positioned. If you're not having that conversation, then you're delusional. And a sales leader that is delusional is also a sales leader that will oversee a team that is not successful, period. So I'm not sure if it actually answers your question, but it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting topic.
For sure.
I literally was talking about this yesterday with someone within financial services industry, right? But before I step into that part, I remember doing my psych degree and learning about emotional intelligence, right? And listening to the professor at the time talking about it. It was only a new concept, came out there in the mid 1990s, and I remember thinking, can emotions really drive decisions? Can they really drive clients' decisions? Whether or not they like me and trust me, but if I can connect with them on an emotional level, would they do business with me? And I was studying my psych degree as I was a financial advisor at the same time. And I remember going, I'm going to try this stuff, right? I'm going to try this with my clients. And I swear, Darren, what happened from that was I connected with my clients on a different level. And I think sometimes what happens is if I'm a sales leader or even if I'm a leader, I remember asking a leader the other day where she had focused on her leadership over the last couple of weeks. I wanted to see her response because we'd been working with some development plans. And she said, well, I've had some time off. My son's been sick. I haven't really been in the office very much. So for me, that was this thinking that she was a leader only when she was switched on as a leader, right? Not being the leader, like you were talking about. Who do I want to be?
Yeah.
So it's the same with sales, the same with sales leaders. We're a leader all the time, aren't we? Like not just when we're with that 1 hour appointment with the client, but when we're with our team, when we're with you guys, when we're with our network or our stakeholders, we just embody that. And I think when you say that woo-woo authentic stuff, I don't think it is. I think if you can just be who you are, then that's what people want to do business with you.
And it is a well-worn cliche that people do business with those who they know, they like, they trust, and who they remember, right? So everybody says that, but I'm not sure that everybody understands what that actually means. So when I talk about sales leadership and being the person you need to be, you don't have to pretend. So by all means, model behaviors and model strategies from others. So you model behavior, you don't copy, but you've got to actually be yourself. So whether your personality style is going to be really detailed, whether you're quite an amiable type person, it doesn't matter. You can be a successful salesperson. You can be a successful sales leader. You can be a successful business person, full stop, right? It doesn't matter. You don't have to have a specific personality. What you do have to be really clear on, though, is what's the outcome I'm trying to create and how am I trying to add value to the people that I'm providing products and services to in the marketplace. It is not about how I can make $1 million or $2 million, how I can close all these deals. It's how do I add value to the marketplace where people want to actually engage and buy and do an interaction with me because of how we make them feel. Now, they're not feeling good about me. They're feeling good about themselves having an interaction with me because we are adding value to them. And I often say to sales teams in particular, you need to understand that your sale doesn't actually begin until after the sale is made, which means you've got to build trust. So if you think about your lifetime value of a customer, and there's lots of businesses out there that say, well, we're highly transactional. And I would still challenge that, because highly transactional sales may be that one particular customer may only purchase that particular product or service once every 2, 3, 4 years. But I guarantee that particular person has a network of others who your trust that you've developed can transfer to others, and they can actually now do business with you because of how you've made that individual feel. So it starts to permeate away from you. So it's a never-ending cycle.
I want to push back a little bit on something. You mentioned it's not about the personality. In my experience working with lots of sales teams as well, I do see that certain roles in sales do a lot better if they have a certain personality. So could we unpack that a little bit more? Like, how would you recruit, for example, a great performer on your team as a sales leader? What would you be looking for?
So to be honest, Bram, that the answer to that question is it depends. And it depends on a lot of different factors. Depends on the industry, depends on the product, depends on the characteristics we have at the moment, but also the characteristics we're looking for. The reason I say it doesn't matter is because I've seen extroverts become very successful in sales. I've seen introverts become very successful in sales. I've seen engineers become very successful in sales. And I've seen people who could not talk to anybody become extremely successful in sales because they're a great listener.
Yep.
What it does come down to is, as a business person, as a person trying to build and expand a team, is what are the characteristics we have that currently are serving the team and serving the customer base, but also what's actually missing from the team that might augment what we do so that we can even be more meaningful to the marketplace. So I resist the temptation to say, hey, all sales leaders have to have these 4 or 5 key characteristics. And what I say, and particularly when I do programs such as, and that might involve profiling, right? Whether it be like DISC or Myers-Briggs and stuff like that, I'm often asked that question, hey, Darren, as a sales leader, what is the best profile to have? And I say, really interesting question. And what most of them are expecting is we want the boisterous, flamboyant, entrepreneurial, big, audacious, hairy goals sort of aspirational type person. And I say, well, the answer is the best profile for a sales leader is the profile that is staring back at the person who is dedicated to becoming the person they need to be in order to have the responsibility of leading a sales team. And that's why I say it doesn't matter. Because you can train, you can evolve, you can get mentoring, you can get coaching. That's my approach, and I've seen it happen.
Yep.
So I'm very reluctant to stereotype
Yep.
certain roles, and even with salespeople. I mean, I had a lot of experience bringing salespeople in from backgrounds perhaps that were not what you expect, and they happened to be great salespeople because I was meticulous with the characteristics that I was looking for at that time that would complement what we already had. And giving the person that opportunity, and then the coaching and the mentoring that goes with that and the development, help that person flourish.
I want to know what you think, Bram, but we've also got a question as well. But what do you think, Bram? And then we'll go to the question.
Think of what?
What do you think of that, knowing of all the work that you do with DISC and in the space that you specialise in?
Look, I agree that there's multiple facets at play, but I do feel also that to be really good at sales, for example, having a people side of the DISC or Myers-Briggs, you have to have it somehow. Otherwise, it sets you back, because the emotional intelligence that we spoke about, unless you can actually feel your own emotions and connect with other people's, you can't really build the trust and the goodwill before you even talk shop. And I always talk about, how the emotional, the purchasing decision, or the desire to work with someone, or the desire to part with money and invest in the product or service that somebody is offering you, it starts first with an emotional connection. If the connection is right, talking shop about numbers is a lot easier, which you alluded to earlier, Kylie. So I remember sitting down with an advisor who was very, very analytical and double taskmaster on the DISC, so CD. And it's very challenging for somebody with that profile, for example, to build an emotional connection, because they can't kind of empathize as easily. So unless you can somehow emotionally build a connection, it's going to be damn bloody hard to do sales, right? Even in transactional work, because you got to make the other people feel a certain way. And unless you can actually feel their feelings, how would you do it? Then it becomes a very cerebral activity. And so, I do feel S&I as DISC helps in sales. And then it's just a matter of whether you want them to be a little bit more stand-backers and a bit more easygoing and process-driven, or more flamboyant, or more results-driven and time is money sort of thing. I like this sort of double. I've seen in sales, it's either IS, more so, or DI. Those two can really complement well. If it's more, let's say, analytical type work, then at least you want S along with C. But don't go in double task people like CD. It becomes really, really tricky to get it right. My 5 cents.
I love it. We've got a question. Darren,
Yep.
When it comes to emerging sales and BD leaders, and that they might not typically be the face of the company, and this is, I think, something we were talking about, or something I was talking about with businesses as well, not just recently, is which we know the company, the clients like and trust. What's the one thing you would suggest that they start implementing to build their own trust? And I think kind of like that personal brand, but connected to the company. So what do you think they need to do to be seen as part of the company, but also a brand of that company?
So is this more a case of maybe we're working or representing a company that is not as well known?
Well, this is salespeople. So
Yeah.
even imagine it like financial planners that have come
Yeah.
into a business. They're not the face of the company, but they actually need to go out there and hunt and be seen as that. And that could be applied in lots of different situations. Accountants, you know, I know dentist practice managers, things like that. BDMs.
Yeah. So how long have we got? We don't have a lot of time.
No, we've got a couple of minutes left.
It's a big question. One of the first things I would say to anybody, and I've seen this because I've worked for big companies and I've worked for smaller companies. In bigger companies, often it's easier to have doors open because of the representation and the brand that's quite recognizable. But even with those organizations, people still revert back to, do I trust Kylie even though she represents a big brand? Or do I trust Kylie when she represents a small brand? So if we always think about that, people will do business with people first and foremost. So if you represent a big organization, the customer and prospective customer will ultimately get a feeling or an impression of that organization through the interaction with you. Now, they might still get interactions on websites and social media and stuff like that. So they get a brand understanding, but ultimately they're going to say, is that brand that I'm seeing, that reputation I believe is existing, is that matched by the reputation I'm starting to experience through the interaction with Kylie? So for a salesperson's point of view, what we have to do is we have to try to build a reputation in the marketplace that we are adding value, that we are reputable, that we are responsive, all the things that you want to put in place to give the impression to prospective customers that I feel like it's a level of comfort dealing with Kylie, irrespective of the company that she represents. Because here's the other thing that tends to happen, is that if you create good value and build great relationships, when you move companies, often customers will follow you, which says that people like to do business with you because of the value you create and how you make them feel in that interaction. Because remember, the sale happens after the sale is made. Not necessarily, I do business with XYZ organization and it's a bonus that Kylie happens to represent that XYZ organization. So what I would be suggesting to salespeople and certainly to sales leaders is, how do I as an individual continue to build my professional reputation? How do I continue to add value? And that means, how do I serve? I don't go out looking to take. I don't go out looking for sales. I go out looking for opportunities to add value and to serve. And sometimes that might require us to invest time, but also might require us to invest money, right? But if I do that with no expectation of anything in return, then the funny thing happens from a universal principle is law of reciprocity will always come back.
Yeah.
So seek to serve. And that's why one of my key philosophies around leadership is servant leadership. You serve and you serve and you serve and you shall receive, but you don't do it, so you receive.
Yeah. There was a great statement by Tom Hopkins who said, I give to receive so I can give even more. So it's very much in line with your philosophy. Anyway,
Totally.
Kylie, I'm mindful of the time, so I'll just go over with the wrap-up question, Darren, and that is, from everything we discussed so far, if you just think of the one thing that you would like to leave our audience with as a sales leader or leader overall, what would it be?
Great question, Bram. And off the top of my head, the thing that I would suggest to people is get really, really clear on two things. One is, who am I? And number two is, why am I wanting to be the person that I am? And that is, get really clear on your personal profile. Who are you and why do you do what you do? Once that's clear, then everything else becomes not so much secondary, but it gives you almost like a North Star to focus on, to say, hey, I know who I am, I know what I do, and I don't have to pretend, right? So you'll start to then attract people and organizations who are in alignment with that, not going out into the marketplace being confused, because as we know in sales, a confused market and a confused buyer will never actually buy.
So true. Great. Great pick of guest, Kylie. Well done.
I love it, Darren. Thank you so much for your time. It's always such a pleasure, and so many gold nuggets today. So thank you, Darren, and Bram. Always such a pleasure seeing you.
Thanks, Bram. Thanks, Kylie.
Likewise. Nice to meet you. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining.